Patience, from what you've been saying, to me, it looks like anyone who identifies as LGBTIQ, because you talked about the presumption of innocence, but it seems when you're LGBTIQ,
you're
you
presumed guilty
and
before
you have to prove.
It is the opposite. Yeah.
And it's quite absurd. Richard, still on organizing. What is next for the community? Patience has stated it very clearly that legally it does not ban anyone else from organizing, from doing, the work that they have to do. And technically, SMUG is also not banned. It's just the name and the presumption of what SMUG was going to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But what does this mean? There's already fear cast in the community. What are you seeing in the community? It's been about 24, maybe close to 30 hours since this ruling came out. But we've also just been in such a dire, situation since March 2023. Yeah? There's been reports about violations. There have been raids on organizations. There have been all these, allegations that have come up. What is the community going to do? What does this mean for the organizing? How are we going to organize going forth? Because the fear has already been cast. And as much as there's not been any recorded incident of an organization being shut down, because SMUG is also a membership organization. And I get clearly from Patience's submission that doesn't mean that those organizations cannot continue working. But also it doesn't mean that SMUG cannot continue to organize, right?
Yeah.
Just tell us what your thoughts are, but also what you're seeing in the community. I'm sure you've been receiving calls, probably DMs, and so on. How do we proceed with this kind of setback? And there have been quite many of these.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Pepe. What I must about this is that it's about instilling fear within the community and taking us back. And the objective is the LGBT community should not be organized, should not be coordinated, should have no face. And it's something that we cannot allow them to do. Our constitution is very clear. We have our rights, but of course they will always continue to deny. Like I said, the judgment is saying one thing, but when you look on this other side, it's because, the organization is LGBT, no registration for them. And I think we've been discussing that from the very start. So with this judgment, one, as SMUG, the spirit of SMUG has never died at any given point. If you all recall very well, in 2022, the NGO Bureau came out in August and made that pronouncement. And making a pronouncement to an organization that was not even registered with them. Just like as you saw, in I think 2021, where we had over 54 organizations that were registered and deregistered. And so again, you see the pattern that it's just not about the work that you do, but it's because of the community you represent. And that's the message that they're passing across. Now, with this case talking about the reservation of the name SMUG and court ruling as it has ruled, should not hold us back from doing our work. And this is why from the very start I said we need to get back to our places of work and continue protecting and supporting the communities. Because what all this does is to throw a spirit of despair and disarray. So we cannot give that to them. But also, like I was saying, we are called a movement for a reason.
Absolutely.
It's not about a building or a specific structure. It's about the spirit of resilience. And that's what we need to continue pushing for. When Pepe was introducing this space today, did also give a background. SMUG just turned 20 years.
Yay!
Yes, 20 years. 2004, in March, SMUG was formed. And just as our pride is always a protest, the formation of SMUG was also a protest, because the leaders at the time recognized that the community was being left out in the programming of government structures, but also programs, yet they were saying they are working with the community. And that's how SMUG has been operating as a movement, and that's how all the organizations that we are seeing, it's because of that. And it is that spirit that I want all the community members on this call, is that we cannot let that flame die. We are an idea. We are a movement. So a movement cannot be stopped by any structural arrangement. That's something that I wanted to share. And secondly, I want to say that the name Sexual Minorities Uganda has always been contested, because this country, we always call ourselves to be holy than, even more Catholic than the Pope. This is why even the idea of comprehensive sexuality education was fought in this country, because the word sex for them mean, the moment they see the word sex, oh my God, yeah, that's terrible, that's sex. So you find that if it was anything, SMUG would have changed and said, okay, let's rebrand. But this is not about rebrand, but identity is very important. Absolutely. The idea of who we are cannot be changed. So again, with all the organizing, I must say that one, we cannot stop doing what we do. We must continue. This judgment is not the end. In fact, it has also opened ways. And as a community, we're not going to rush, or we shouldn't rush in making decisions and making aware of what our next steps are. Because one of the things is we've been so much predictable, what we are going to do, what we are going to say, and more than ever, this is why such places or spaces are important now, that we are speaking as a family first. So this is something that we need to do. This is an opening. This is one day out, but we shall come back stronger. And we must continue with the resilience, because that will give us the freedom.
Can I say something?
Yes, please, go ahead.
I just wanted to add on what Richard was saying. If the courts have come out to say you cannot register an organization because it's an LGBTI rights-based organization, they are actually staging trouble for themselves, for lack of a better word. Why am I saying this? We are going to have several organizations registering for environment rights, for other rights, but in actual sense they are protecting LGBTI rights, because you have failed to recognize that this group is here and they deserve to be protected. Their rights deserve to be preserved. they need to be promoted. So what we are headed for is, how are we going to maneuver? How are we going to deal with the legal framework? So the judgment also needs to be well thought about, because the work has to continue. That is one. We are definitely not going to stop to associate. That is something that cannot be taken away. So how do we do it, given the current legal framework? So that is going to involve having all kinds of ways that is now going to put more work on the governing bodies.
And I like that you say we'll continue associating. Usually with the anti-LGBT rhetoric, they say, oh, it's an African, and it's all, you know, all these things. But I know for a fact that communing and coming together is actually an African value, because we are very communal people. We gather, we come together, and as much as it's in our constitution that that right is guaranteed, I see that time and again, our governments in Africa are taking that away. It's like you're not community enough. You're not an associate enough to be, you know, in some form of gathering. And for me, of course, as I think about it broadly and think about democracy, Uganda has been praised for democracy. I'm a democracy scholar myself. And I disagree with some of the principles because in practice, especially in Africa, and even the so-called developed world, I don't see that really panning out. And also in the spirit of Pan-Africanism, our country and our, you know, the country's leader prides themselves in being patriotic and being Pan-African. And yet, with Pan-Africanism, it's about a collective. Every person within the borders of Africa is supposed to be protected, is supposed to prosper and be fruitful. But when you eliminate one section of Africanness, then you're basically dismantling what Africanness means as a whole. What does it mean for the way we've been organizing over the years? We've brought people in. We've not been on our own. We've not been working in silos. We have organizations that are partnered with us. In 2009, we were able to collect, to bring together about 54, 55 mainstream organizations to come and fight the Anti-Homosexuality Act 2009, then 14, as an act which was eventually nullified by the Constitutional Court. SMUG has been a pivotal or a center of bringing mainstream partners together to fight for human rights of marginalized people, and specifically for LGBTIQ persons or organizing. What does this judgment mean for those kinds of partnerships? And maybe I'll start with you, Richard, because UKPC has global partnerships. And then Patience, you'll also answer in terms of local partnerships. Like, what does this ruling mean? We're focusing on the ruling just for people listening out there, because it's the current, elephant in the room, elephant in the country that people do not want to discuss. I see some comments online. Kash, it's good to see you here. Victor, thank you so much for joining. It's really good to see you here as well. I can't see the other names. Just wanted to give shout outs to everyone who has joined. Bana, John Grace, all of you. Of course, I've set myself up by mentioning names, but you'll forgive me. I acknowledge all of you. I acknowledge all your presence. And I see people from West Nile. I see people from Northern Uganda, people outside Uganda, people from Jinja, Mwena, Greetings to you. So back to our panelists. What does this mean for partnerships, locally and globally?
Thanks so much, Pepe. And just as we've been dealing with AHA, we have the Convening for Equality, CFE, as our collective voice. And as you mentioned, when we started fighting the first AHA or AHA 1.0 in 2009, we had a coalition that was formed and we worked with different partners. This time around, 10 years later, there's been a lot of differences and growth, first of all, within the community. And this is why we have the Convening for Equality, that this time around, community is taking lead, working with partners. And what that means is that community is taking the lead and being the face. This is something that over change, and I think we must appreciate ourselves that in the organizing, we have a say in what our destiny is going to be, and I think we should congratulate ourselves. The fact that we are able to organize, but also work in partnership with other partners. Now, with this particular ruling, and I'll speak firstly to donors, usually there's always panic. And the first instance is they stop sending resources. Now, this is not the time to be having conversations with your donors of saying, oh, now we need to cut funding, we need to wait, and all. No. The conversation should be having with donors is that this ruling has happened. Now, more than ever, we need the resources to continue doing the work that we are doing to support community. And that only will come if we are also firm, and we need to be. So we need to send a very clear message to our donors that regardless of the ruling, as a movement, we are going to continue to do the work that we do. Secondly, nothing changes how we engage with the different stakeholders, but rather this should really emphasize the reason why we should join forces to fight any laws that discriminate the LGBT people, that discriminate any minority group and any vulnerable group that the majority think have the bigger voice. So more than ever, our partnerships, our partners must work with us to fight this injustice. This is not a time to reevaluate partnerships and cutting funding. Oh, now LGBT organizations will not be able to do the work, or maybe let's send them to partners. I think this is the moment to actually strengthen the organizing of the community. Yeah, thanks.
All right, Patience. Partnerships locally. Probably some people, before that, someone says, why don't we register sexy minorities Uganda? It's made my day. Thanks, Brian.
So from sexual, we do
sexy.
With the country that when they see the word sexual, they're already triggered. Like the antennas go on. I don't know in which angle, but
to add on what you have just talked about, Richard, I always wonder why it's sometimes donors, this is the time that they freak out. Because what are the resources meant to help if everything is okay? Mm-hmm. In my view, the resources that the donors give are to help change the situation. So if everything is fine, why then do we need the resources? I think this is not the time for freaking out and jumping out of partnerships like Richard has mentioned. This is the time to actually strengthen them. Because I need money now to do what I have to do right now. Because if everything is okay, and let me say we are looking at a better Uganda in years to come, there will be no need for the resources. The resources are needed now when the times are not good. That aside, you asked about what does it mean for partners now?
Like chapter 4.
Like chapter 4 relating with SMUG. If SMUG is not registered as a company limited by guarantee, it is not registered as an NGO, we are not relating with SMUG as an organization or a company. We are partnering with SMUG as individuals. We are partnering with the individuals in SMUG. So if a document comes out and maybe we have, let me say, a memorandum of understanding to do work with them, and we choose to put it as SMUG, in case of anything, SMUG is not a legal person recognized under the law because of this ruling. So the best thing as a lawyer, as partners, you relate to the individuals that work with SMUG currently until maybe another organization is registered or something better comes up, or we have a better Uganda to say, to hope. Yeah, so, but now we are relating with the individuals. We are partnering with individuals. Yeah.
Okay, are there any questions? You know, Patience, from what you've been saying, to me, it looks like anyone who identifies as LGBTIQ, because you talked about the presumption of innocence, but it seems when you're LGBTIQ,
you're
you
presumed
have
guilty
and
before
you have to prove.
it is the opposite.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's quite absurd. Richard, still on organizing. What is next for the community? Patience has stated it very clearly that legally it does not ban anyone else from organizing, from doing, you know, the work that they have to do. And technically, SMUG is also not banned. It's just the name and the presumption of what SMUG was going to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But what does this mean? There's already fear cast in the community. What are you seeing in the community? It's been about 24, maybe close to 30 hours since this ruling came out. But we've also just been in such a dire, you know, situation since March 2023. Yeah, there's been reports about violations. There have been raids on organizations. There have been all these, you know, allegations that have come up. What is the community going to do? What does this mean for the organizing? How are we going to organize going forth? Because the fear has already been cast. And as much as there's not been any recorded incident of an organization being shut down, yeah, because SMUG is also a membership organization. And I get clearly from Patience's submission that that doesn't mean that those organizations cannot continue working. But also it doesn't mean that SMUG cannot continue to organize, right?
Yeah.